Growing pains, not gloom and doom. Hey, it's episode 284 of Trekland Tuesdays Live with me, Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you right here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47 for the big picture, clarity, and sanity in all things Star Trek. Thank you all for being here so much. I do want to say welcome to Trekland, where we are waiting in another couple of weeks to nail down the date for our guest. And of course, our annual open house is meant to show off everything about Portal. We open the gates and have a great guest and a mini round table. It's for everybody, free. We have drawings. We'll have some giveaways and door prizes too. So go over to LarryNemecek.com. If you want to claim your seat now, it's all free and virtual. But hey, we're doing the giveaways. We want to do that. LarryNemecek.com is the place to go, which of course, while you're there, you can also see real quick and click out, if you're a cruiser or not, our special Trekland Treks Away Days missions the day before and the day after the big official cruise in LA. Love to have you with us on the big group for that one. And speaking of big groups, you can also click in at my site and get info. Go to the big West Coast Away mission, the big 10-day sucker for location site filming tours with myself leading the way. It's a Geek Nation Tours production with Terrace. You can go and check out all of that. That's in July. It's a standalone. It's 10 days and nights in LA and San Fran. That's what all's going on at the minute. But today, I want to talk. I've been going week to week here thinking, wow, Star Trek world has really settled down. We're talking about the episode of the week, which currently happens to be Prodigy, and Prodigy is blooming, but there haven't been any driving headlines lately. Could we be in the permanent prosperity plateau of Star Trek goodness? Well, I think we still are. But this last week has been increasingly a little bit not so settled feeling. In fact, to cap things off, I saw a few tweets, some chatter online, people talking about some of the upheavals, you might say. For one thing, what really started this off was the cancellation of Mission Seattle last week. Let's talk about that in a minute, but I saw that. I saw people kind of taking that and running. I think there's a lot about people, the fact everything going on with Twitter, and are you going to Mastodon or now Hive? People are like, what am I doing? It is feeling a little queasy. In fact, I saw a couple of posts for people talking about even lumping in the Eagle Moss bankruptcy and, be careful with your little ships. What's up with that? Although, that is a point of turmoil and chaos. The whole thing with the future Star Trek movie, Star Trek Arabic 4, not Roman numeral 4. And even somebody pointing out that a lot of the books have not been out there. Now, good points. Yes, I know. Obviously, look, we're getting a new episode of Trek almost every week in some form or fashion. Let's not forget that. In fact, let's not forget, if you're one that's been feeling a little upheavaled, upshoveled, disheveled, upheaved the last week or two, let's maybe bring some perspective. I mean, it's been a long time since I felt like I was in Uncle Larry mode here on Trekland Tuesdays Live. But let's just take stock. Amazingly, it's Thanksgiving week. Maybe we should just take stock of not only what do we have to be thankful for, but maybe what's in upheaval isn't quite so bad. If you've been feeling that way, hang on. But first off, the whole Mission Seattle thing, which was just breaking about the time I had been hearing rumblings about this for a while, connecting with other folks. I hear people have been rumbling about it for some time. And what's interesting from a fan perspective, it's the show, it's the event, it's the thing. But, as a practicality, there's really two sides to running a big convention type event. You've got the talent side with the guests, which are grabbing your headlines, but you've also got the logistics, and you've got the relationships with the vendors and the gray area in between, actually, the publicity and promotion. And for the third time, going back to Mission New York in 2016, now we had a Mission Chicago under an exclusive license, and now supposedly Mission Seattle until the cancellation. And I really am thinking, we didn't talk about this last week. I'd heard rumblings about this. I keep hearing rumblings. There's been just upheaval connected with all these shows. Now, is it Reed Pop? Reed Pop, just for in case you don't know, Reed Events And then Reed Pop is their pop. Reed Events has done trade shows around the world for ages. And aside from stodgy trade shows and big consumer shows and all that, aside from those, Reed Pop itself runs New York Comic Con, which was nothing 12 years ago, but they've grown it into the East Coast, Comic Con. It's got a little internal nuts and bolts, way different than San Diego, but it's the major force of Comic Con as a fan event and also as a promotional vehicle and attracting star talent to attract fans and attract media. Yeah, it's in that same place for the east half of the country, for the East Coast. Reed Pop runs that. Reed Pop has bought Comic Cons around I know they have Seattle Emerald City Comic Con in Seattle. They were familiar with the Seattle Convention Center. They have several conventions around the country. Of course, they also run Celebration, the big licensed custom Star Wars event, and several others. But between those two, you would think this should be a no-brainer. Well, that's the way it occurred to CBS, now Paramount Plus. From that side of things, and people still wondering, questioning about the ending of the Vegas license, and even we can go global here and talk about DST. I think the perception was at the studio, nothing against Creation or DST. I think this is one of those cases when you hear me talk about San Diego Comic-Con and the players at the big table. I think since the return of Star Trek, it hasn't just meant how much Star Trek are we getting fresh every week for viewers. I think as a corporation, as an entity, as a franchise that's trying to earn a little respect at the big boys table, I think they were looking to up the game for not just the presence at conventions, but their own. Basically, CBS / Paramount Plus, Paramount Global was looking to have its version of Celebration. Duh, of course. Now, Star Trek Day in September is its own anniversary. You don't share that with anybody. That's your own produced event. And we've seen growing pains with that. But even in a bigger place, in a bigger space, a full-blown weekend convention that has vendors involved and more media involved than just a red carpet trade, and at one more time than September of the year, some other time of year, of course you want to have a celebration-like event. And I think this is where the ships passed in the night. I think somewhere on the way, the CBS Paramount side and the Reed Pop side expectation, somewhere something is not clicking. Now, people are talking about the sections not being ready at the new Seattle Convention Center and cancellation. That could be. But I think what's really going on here is a lot of factors that are nobody's fault. For one thing, pandemic. The whole Reed Pop Mission Chicago deal was supposed to have been announced a year before it was. But in the middle of wondering when we'd come back from COVID, doing the dance, Creation having the existing license and it hadn't run out yet, and being allowed the delay to try to cram in another convention before their year ran out, because the paradigm would shift, right? The landscape would shift. People's expectations were going to shift from just knowing the comfortable zone of Vegas every year to realizing that now it's a whole new ballgame. And what will this mean? And the factor of it being a caravan. Every year it'd be at a new city, somewhat like Celebration. So again, you've got this triangle. You've got the studio, you've got the vendor, you've got other vendors, and you got the fan base. And the fan base in this case, you could almost include the vendors and the guests and everybody else who's wondering how this thing is going to land. So yeah, the pandemic threw a huge monkey wrench into all that, between our travel plans and our expectations in our comfort zone and that of the vendors and that of the guests, to local conditions, to what is the corporate way to get in and out of a license change? How do you put the best foot forward, but you leave clearance? All of that went out the window. So there is that. But I think also Reed Pop took on the Star Trek license at the earnestness of the studio. Studios wanting to grow their footprint, grow their place in the world of the franchises. And I think they saw, obviously, Reed Pop knows what they're doing. They saw that as a step up. I think Reed Pop saw that as growing growing a baby kind of celebration. But here is the thing, and this is why sometimes miscommunication in teams, all the way from your team or your family, your marriage, all the way up to, very publicly, movies and TV series. Why sometimes all these great people put together, the spin doesn't coalesce, it spins everybody off. That you're returning, watch Apollo 13. Your returning space capsule has to hit just the right angle, or else you hit the atmosphere and go bouncing off, or you hit the atmosphere and burn up. You've got to come in at the right angle. And I think sometimes these chaotic factors enter in. Now, look at this. What happened to both entities involved both ways? CBS has blossomed with Star Trek, yay, but CBS also remerged, and we keep talking about, I don't think we all still understand the ripple effects of the remarriage. I mean, most of you, I want to say, yay, the family's back together again, but the family's back together again after a bunch of the kids and second kids grew up and went off to college and had kids and moved. And there's a lot of blended family issues going on here. We talk about it with, the coming of the next movie, but I think there are ripple effects in licensing, in events, in the marriage of the TV, the interrelationship of the TV world and the movie world, and how you're coming at that with people. There's a lot of stitching together, and probably in ways that we're not even thinking about here. But as far as how it dribbles down, how it trickles down to we, the Trek audience, we, the Trek consumers, and even the Trek partners like licensees and actors involved and spin-off entities, how all of that's affected is still waiting for some of these ripples to play out. And part of that is a lot of new people, are involved with Star Trek on the business side. There's been a huge expansion in licensing and social media and promotion. That's all good. That's all good. Now, the pandemic affected that too, but some of our longest old friends from Star Trek world, the whole world is not on their shoulders. There's been an expansion of teams involved in all these promotional and marketing and event spheres, and their bosses on top, and their bosses on top. And at the same time, the pandemic has affected companies like ReedPop. They've had turnover. I know we dealt with 2 and 3 different people over the year going into Mission Chicago. So there's a lot of instability there. And now talk about the people on both of these entities. For whatever reason, new faces involved, new people involved. Are there long-term relationships? They're getting fewer and farther between. The whole thing reminds me when everything blew up in 2005 and 2006. I looked around and suddenly all the licensee friends, all the people at the studio, just the logistics, everything was blown up. And as we finally learned, Bad Robot was not intending to play like just another slice of the pie. They wanted the whole pie. Meanwhile, all these legacy assets and legacy players were like, I'm sorry, who are you? The new Lucasfilm? No, not quite. No, not quite. People aren't going to give up on their Shatners and Nimoys and Kellys and their Stewarts and Frakes and Spiners and Burtons and on down the line. Not quite yet. And so that was a collision of intentions there that we all kind of stumbled around with in the fallow years. So yes, those kinds of things happen. It's been a while since we've had the smooth running machine of the 90s and the aughts. The outside industrial, business, commercial influences, pandemics, it's affecting all that. Coming back to Mission Seattle, I just think all of those factors are at play here. The biggest thing we've talked about for years, I don't think ReedPop's anticipation, coupled with the fact that there's been turnover to add to this, but I think the whole anticipation of how the model would go is just completely, not disruptive, but just completely 90 degrees to what not only the business side is expecting and maybe demanding, and maybe that's a whole other discussion, but also just the fan base. Fans talk about how there are no guests listed for months at a time. That's not the way. I think it comes down to Paramount wants a celebration type event, and to ReedPop, celebration means everybody just show up. You know it's going to be a party. You know it's Star Wars. It's a party. Here's the dates. Just buy your tickets and come on. And that's not enough for the Star Trek world. Maybe if Reed Pop sticks with it and nurtures that along, maybe in 3 or 4 or 5 years, that's where people will be. Hey, look, the cruise with actual celebrities to a licensee, ECP, who had done theme cruises before, and even some with entertainment related people, but not franchise and not with established people that, oh my God, we're doing a cruise. Instead of a world that's going, okay, we've done conventions for 80 years. How does this translate to a cruise? But ECP, with maybe a bumpy start the first year or two, now the cruise is a thing. Its community is a thing. The expectations are set. And yeah, I hope to be a guest on a cruise here in the next year or 2 or 3 coming up. But in a short order, that community has gelled. The expectations, the business model, everything has gelled between the talent, the guests, the fans, the company. That synergy has all spun in. It just feels like the mission synergy among all the players involved, all sides of the triangle or quadrangle or hexagon, has not. And I'm not saying it's the end of the world here, although I keep hearing rumblings that maybe so, but none of this has to be the end of the road. Things could all be settled. There could just be, number one, a settling. The studio side can settle. The Reed Pop side can settle. Labor markets, economics, pandemic fears, everything could just settle. Because the outward signs are insane for this. Star Trek is bigger than it's been in 15 years. There is more future-looking connectivity. That's the bright spot in all this. There's more episodes. There's more actors to pull from. There are more creatives. Please don't forget the creatives to pull from. And that's a long-term sentiment. But there's a little bit of patience involved here and needed. Patience to both sides, two-way. Patience for people just to get to know each other and have relationships on all 3 sides of the aisle. And patience to grow the event, grow the expectation game, and just grow the trust factor. Maybe people are coming in with too abrupt an assumption on all sides. Studio, event producer, and fandom. But whatever it is, right now, we need some baby steps and some learning steps. And when fans don't see guests listed, they don't want to hear, well, that's not the way the celebration model is. That's Star Wars. That's a limited number of movies that are themselves in a little bit of chaos now and a little bit of retrenching. A lot of voice actors for some very popular animation and some small scope movies, limited series. They're going to be much easier to attract actors to a fan event than the big budget movies have been over the years. So there's a little bit of dynamic change over in Wars land. But to expect to run a mission the way Celebration is run, at least right now, on all sides, that should be some cause for reflection. Whether there'll be that kind of time to do that, we're going to have to see. We're going to have to see. Because I get the idea that Mission Seattle has not been a thing for some time. And the fact that it comes to the public by some customer service reps drop into a fan's reply, and that's how it busts out and finally forces them to say this. I don't know. I don't know. And what does that say in the big picture about the whole backstage relationship? I don't know. Again, we hear rumblings from all sides. I still wonder if the traveling city, maybe that works again for Star Wars. Will that work for Star Trek? Maybe after people are used to it. But in the upset, people were just thinking about Chicago. And the whole time I'm saying, yes, but it'll be Seattle. Don't get too cozy here because it'll be Seattle next year. And Star Trek fans love their traditions year to year. The cruise people already have it. The Vegas people already have it. You know what you do. Masquerade Bar. Oh my God, we survive Bally's. Forget the end of COVID. We survived Bally's. And the split 2 floors. People are so looking forward to being back at the Rio, even if there's some reopening bumps and bruises. But the known, the traditional, the tradition, the annual event, even spin-offs that run for years and years. Bob Picardo's charity auction on the last night before it got bumped by expanding programming. I mean, I can think of so many, and we have Landing Party, the opening night of Con Eve. I mean, we did it at Bally's, but it was like no one knew what was the vibe, where to have things. That's, I think, what Trek fans treasure. Even if you're new to the convention, it's nice to go up to someone who will put their arm around you and say, "Oh, well, here's everything. You want to do this and this, And when that's uprooted every year to year, so I don't know. I know that was a dream of the studio, and who knows? After 2 or 3 years, we might be in that, guys. Letting Vegas run on might have been a way to say, hey, have it either way. Have it both ways. You're going to have more bells, whistles, more cherries on top with the licensed con, but they're letting it happen. And then poor DST in Europe. Okay. What was that? Was that going to grow into a Reed Pop situation as well? I don't know. Part of this gang is how many event producers are out there, and there's a few more in the pop culture space. Do they want to take on dealing with a licensed convention? Is not just all the headaches and logistics of running the event, but now you have to liaise with your franchisee, in this case Paramount, so and have a merged idea there of how you're going to present the franchise and work together. And of course, the franchise is always going to want to promote the new shows and pay homage to the legacy shows. There may even be a tension there about how much legacy versus franchise at a certain time. And of course, eventually the years go by and that becomes a moot point. Or does it? If you're playing your cards right, you're always creating new series at the right time, and there'll always be legacy shows. And that's always a dynamic that'll be in play. But that's all going on. I know just a lot of people. Mission Seattle was a befuddlement, and with no comeback, there was no "this is gone, but this is coming." People are left kind of hanging, which is not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling. Quick to point out that Vegas, that creation, was quick to jump in and say, "Hey, if you're wondering about the chaos of the future, we're still here." And they didn't even say, and we'll be back at the Rio, thank God. They didn't say that. But that was out in the zeitgeist. The cruise has announced for 2023 its dates. So there is that. So Eagle Moss, departure, bankruptcy, implosion, caught a lot of the tech world on unawares, off stride. But there's good news. I keep hearing good news about at least the different lines, the different factions landing. Even the book publishing has been a bit, up in the air. So we're hearing good thoughts about that from Ben. Ben Robinson has been saying, I can't get ahead of things. I have to be NDA, of course, but we're going to try to land this. So don't give up on your little ships yet, right? Star Trek 4, going down this laundry list of the things to be upset about. Star Trek 4 being canceled, I don't think canceled. Paramount is going to make another Star Trek movie or more. That we've had the talk about, even while a live action one is getting its shit together, they may press ahead with an animated movie for Prodigy. In the same way that SpongeBob, the movie is not seen in live action terms as, well, now we have graduated to the big screen. It just feeds viewers back to the cycle of animation, including fresh animation. And hey, as we have seen the last week or 2 or 3, I think people are starting to get it, that Prodigy might be presented for kids, but it is not just for kids. In fact, there are so many, I was tweeting on this, there are so many subtle touches flying right by you in Prodigy. Negotiations with Romulans for the evacuation before the supernova. It will fly right by you in that 22-minute format if you're not paying attention or looking at all the graphics around the edges. It is just as graphic in intent and depth as Lower Decks. May not be the mania You may not be, you may not be frame grabbing, screen capping 47 million different collector's items on the Trebellion trade ship or something, but a ransacked museum or starbase. But there's all kinds of treats if you're watching. I mean, Jorg's channel, he's made a career now of doing what I just do at home. If I had known I was supposed to take screen caps and share them with the world in 1990s tech, I would have done it. But it's easy to see that Prodigy is really going to be something. Don't write it off if you haven't. I mean, Cadet Alice loves it, but that doesn't mean that you on your level can't also. So, the movie, if there is, we're still waiting on live action, pressing ahead with a Prodigy, and this has not been announced, aside from the speeches that Brian, who came from animation into the motion picture division, we've cited them, we talk about it all the time in Portal 47. They've thrown that out there as a strategy. We can have more than one movie in a theater at once as the movie world itself recovers, right? I even saw some grumbling about the lack of book titles this year. Well, there's a lot of stuff going on. I would just say that if you mean by books, you mean novels, you mean fiction. Okay, there's tons of nonfiction, and we've got the young adult. Rob Perlman and Dr. Aaron have got books out. We're going to have some more with that later. There are backstage books coming out. There's lots of book material out there, not all of it fiction. So if you buy the fiction, if by books you mean novels, the comics are running wild right now and filling that gap. So gang, between all the new series coming, between the TNG reunion on Picard 3rd season, between, yes, Strange New Worlds, by the way, coming back in just a couple of months, don't forget. But Strange New Worlds blowing up the world and reminding everybody what episodic can be. And I'll even say, Discovery just wrapped its season 5. Yes, Discovery. The problem child, the oldest child of the family, who bucks the stereotype of being the oldest child. I keep hearing some incredible things about season 5 and not being the same tone that the last couple have been, not being a universal save, the universe at stake, but something different. They can just hang on to characters, see where all this goes. Even Discovery, about to have maybe another 5th version of a Renaissance that's a little bit different than all the other Renaissances. That's an amazing situation to have, and for all these other people to share, to exploit, if you will, on all these licenses and events. I mean, there are so many episodes in production that are coming down the pike, no pun intended, and that's all good stuff, which is why I get back to this title. I don't really think it's been that gloom and doomy. I think it's just been growing pains. We've got growing pains of the franchise. We've got growing pains of what this restitched together corporation looks like. We've got growing pains of how they have to give the rest of the world signals about what's happening. And I say that as all the suits above. Increasingly, Star Trek on the ground with its creators. Look at these showrunners we have now. Oh my God. We have so many fanboys and fangirls involved with the shows if they can just wrestle the machinery to the ground. And in a lot of cases, they have been doing just that. Increasingly more so as the years go by. And now we know about how they huddle up. They have monthly huddles up meetings, which is why you're starting to see some of this. Well, okay, the Strange New Worlds Lower Decks crossover show coming up is obviously the biggest example, but just the keeping in touch with each other. Even the story about people arguing over Will coming back is Wesley, and who's going to get that first and where best to use it. That's unprecedented. We used to think about, is it possible for the shows to coordinate with, say, the book line? But having 5 series, even if they're not simultaneous, they overlap in a lot. But these year-long writers' rooms and these year-long production schedules, and they're a year off from each other, that actually takes as much as if they were DS9 Voyaging side by side. And thank God they had a quadrant separation to not overlap too much. So yeah, it's kind of amazing. I'm just going to say, for all the angst you might be feeling about some of these events, some of these things falling, some of these things being delayed, it's growing pains. I think when we hit our stride, it's going to be amazing. And not just for what we see on screens. All of the synergy, all the spinoff is going to be, it's going to be there. It's going to be there. We got to let an awful lot of people settle into their jobs. We used to think about that just being the writer's rooms or the visual effects or the set, but whoever's running, this is bigger than that. When you're going to try to have a big, huge franchise, it's going to be bigger than, of course, they're at the core. They're the driving force. But if we're really thinking about something that is just an uber part of our lives, all these other aspects are involved too. And it's only been, as somebody noticed a couple of months ago, it was only 7 years since Discovery premiered in this brave new world on a network called CBS Plus or CBS All Access. And no one knew exactly where this was going to go. And we sure the hell didn't know we'd have everything interrupted for over 2 years by a massive pandemic. There's a lot of gears involved here, a lot of wheels turning, and not just on a show or even a group of shows. Now we're talking the full brunt of what we mean by franchise. 7 years, a year after a pandemic, those are all tiny numbers to figure out what's, when you're interacting with a world that's also dealing at large with labor markets and costs and inflation and supply chains and communication and upheaval. How many have stampeded over to Mongoose? I'm sorry, Mastodon. Is Twitter, should I stay or should I go? Should I straddle both? And all the buzz about Hive. By the way, I'm on Mastodon. I haven't even thought to put it on my socials yet. But if you're on Mastodon, we're all still kind of feeling that's going to be a future show, I'm sure. But that's on top of all this. And nobody at Reed Pop or Paramount had anything to do with that. So that's just adding to it. We've gone from 2 or 3 months here of kind of settledness to, it feels like, yes, a lot of things are in upheaval right now. But I'm going to say that I think, look, after the last couple of years, we all survived by Zooming our sanity together with orchestra people playing instruments at home to compose a score so that episodes could finally be released of your favorite live action Treks, or animated for that matter. If we can get through that, we can get through anything. Come on, gang. Anyway, I think I just wanted to say that. I was starting to see this rolling percolation of, oh no, it sure is unsettled out there. And if it is, it's not gloom and doom. It's just growing pains, guys. If you are watching us later right now, you missed the live chat, but you can still comment below, and maybe you can join us Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. European, 9 p.m. Central Europe. Maybe you can join us live sometime, especially as we enter the holiday season. I look forward to that because we do have a global group here on Trekland Tuesdays Live, as we do through everything in Trekland. Just want to say also, once again, reminder, LarryNemecek.com. LarryNemecek.com is where you can get your ticket to make sure you're in for the drawings when we have our mystery guest revealed early December, gang. Okay. Hopefully in the next few days around our American Thanksgiving holiday, we can finally nail this down and let you know what's going on. But you want to be there. It's our 7th anniversary, 7 years of Portal 47, which is amazing in and of itself. And while you're at my site, you can also click in and get information about the LA Away Days special pre and post cruise events, right? In March and February 23rd, March 4th. Also, you can get information while you're there about the big West Coast Away Days, July 8th through the 17th. That's 10 days in Los Angeles, San Francisco. Again, all of my Trekland tours, the Away Days, and this special, our partnership with G&T, we're all talking about the locations, but we're also talking about being there in person. You cosplay, we help you. You brought your props, you brought your stuffed animals. Whatever it is you want to do when you vacation, if you want to do it the Trek way, we'll help you get there and do it. Most of all, I also, of course, want to thank all of our Patreon folk, our TTL Club. I'm talking about Diana Hopkins, Lawrence Todd, Keith Rombach, Nathaniel Robinson, Robin Wilson, Anne-Marie Siegel, Justin Porteous, Andrew Dzimski, Pranakasha Productions, Gay Kevin Lundstrom, and Galinda Bruton, sorry. And our live wires, once again, Halbert Gunn Johnson, Robert McLean, Alan Hoensi, J.R. Poole, Byron Bailey, Dave Gregory, and Casey Shafsky. That's our Patreon folk. Thank you guys so much. We're about to finally take another big step in how we do our streaming, but $5 and $10 a month is what you're doing to help support that. It's simple, not complicated. It's a shout out. Thank you guys so much. We're still working on the access to the interviews past. I may just finally get that done by the holidays and just send you naked URLs. We'll see. Patreon.com/TreklandLive. It's billed kind of like PayPal, but they do it at the end of the month. So if you want to jump in still, you can still get in for November. I'll update that. Of course, around the rest of Trekland, it's a Tuesday, and it means there's been a new Trek Files. So you can check out podcast.roddenberry.com for all the Roddenberry podcasts. Trek Files, of course, is on Facebook, also with the document, and our place to comment is there. We're working on community. It's just a hashtag Trek Files on Twitter. This week is the last of my interview with Ralph Sinensky, the original series director of 8 classic episodes like This Side of Paradise and Tholian Web and Return to Tomorrow and Obsession and yes, and Metamorphosis. But it's Ralph talking about Gene Kuhn. So we were so lucky to have Andrea, his former assistant, live at Vegas and talking about Lee Kuhn. She shared previously twice with our Portal 47 folks. So we did this one in public. So you want to check that out. Amazing for a private interview we did, and we've made it. We've podified it. Otherwise, gang, LarryNemecek.com, Larry Nemecek on Twitter. Still, it's Larry Nemecek on Mastodon, too, if you want to try and get over there and figure that out. Larry Nemecek's Trekland on YouTube. Please like and subscribe there. Also, Facebook and Instagram. Portal47.net. Yes, you'll be hearing a lot more about that when we have the open house in a couple of weeks. We're going to have our holiday gift offer come on. You want to stay tuned for all that. Taking a year off from Cyber Monday and Black Friday this year, but we're going to have an awesome gift offer. But you know what? Pay attention. We might just throw some crazy 24-hour deal out there, whether it's Black Monday, Cyber Monday or not. And you want to stay tuned for that. Stay healthy, gang. They're talking about the wave of COVID coming back. And hey, I got boosted. I had my covariant booster, plus I got my flu shot, which I rarely do. But I did not want to lose any more time this year. So yay for that. Take care of yourself, okay? And yeah, stay woke. There's still misinformation out there. There's still things to pay attention to. And still things that you may learn that are a shock. But if you check the source, you'll know whether to trust it or not, okay? Just be open to that, but be smart when you're being opened. What can I say? I guess we say Trek well.